Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I must say it is a great pleasure and honor to be the supervisor of Eindhoven. And before you all think, wie is this raar Engelsman? Actually, I'm Irish. I was born in Ireland in 1965. I'm married with 3 kids, and I have 5 dogs, and I live in Amsterdam. And I've been a practicing architect for 27 years. The very first project I ever did was a fietsenstalling in Amsterdam, a multi-story fietsenstalling. And I've done fietsenstallings, but I've also designed the VVIP terminal at Schiphol and many other buildings. In the last few years, we've been really busy building woningbouwprojects, sociale woningbouw projects. And here in Eindhoven, you probably know the project Hash Over. And this was one of the projects that we did in my office. We also work globally, internationally, and now at the moment we're very busy in the Middle East and in West Africa. And supervisor, I've been a supervisor for the last 15 years. I do a lot of supervisie in Amsterdam, and I'm also the supervisor or bouwmeester of Schiphol. And many people ask, what does a supervisor do? And basically, this is what I do. I won't read it to you, but you can see it's basically, I basically guide the design process of the building, urban planning, and the architecture. And then I pass it over to the Welstand or the CRK, and there is a kind of cross-check. And why I wanted to be a supervisor was because I really believe in the city and how do we make our cities. And I believe that cities make people more civilized, and we behave better when we live in cities. And what I'm interested in is what is happening in the Netherlands for the last 50 years, but particularly the last 20 years, and why we have a situation that we have today with the stikstof. So if you look at Amsterdam, Amsterdam grew over time in 100 years to a huge surface. And if you look at this is the size of the city, but if you look here, the green line, this is the number of residents, inwoners. So the whole city grew like this, but the number of residents didn't grow. So we consumed a huge amount of land. And if you look at Rotterdam, it's the same story. Again, a huge amount of land, and again, exactly the same story in proportion. Very few inwoners compared to the size or the amount of area that we have consumed. Now, of course, you can call, there's an aspect of that is called welvaart, but it's also just being wasteful with our land. And if we look at Eindhoven, it's exactly the same situation. Actually, in fact, in Eindhoven, we even used more ground compared to the number of residents. And what we need to do is we need to bring more residents into the city and stop consuming ground and building outside of our cities. And if you look at the Netherlands and the map of the Netherlands, you'll see how this has happened all over the country. I've just taken 3 cities, but I've done this for many more cities. And this is a diagram. The Dutch we consume 15% of our surface, 15% for city building and infrastructure, 60, 70%, 68% for agriculture, and 14% for forestry and nature. If we compare that to the rest of the world, the proportions are very different, 0.5%. And then this amount for agriculture, and this amount for nature. There has to be a bigger balance. And then you all know the diagrams. This is the stikstof problem, and again, you'll see it's crystal clear. As architects and as residents, we cannot influence completely how it goes with the landbouw, but we can influence how we deal with our environment, our city, our built environments, how we bring and how we live closer to nature. We've got to bring a balance, 50% nature, 50% of the planet is for man, 50% has to be for nature. And what we've been doing, the old idea of building out, we have to build in. We have to inbreid. This is a technical word we use all the time, and I know that some people say, what does inbreiding mean? But actually, inbreiding is building inside. Now, some people fear the big city. They say the big city, there are big problems. Yes, there are huge problems in big cities, but there are huge solutions. Big cities are more innovative, they use less resources, and this has been proven. And it's almost like the elephant compared to the mouse. The elephant is far more efficient. So we have to think about how can we accommodate more people in the city. Also, the cities that we love are cities that are full of people, a lot more people in them. So we need to densify, so we need to inbreid, and we need to make that also, we have to make it nature-inclusive bau. We have to bring more nature into the cities, because that creates a feeling of well-being, and it makes you feel better, and it makes that density much more acceptable. We also need to think about Voorzieningen program, and we need to think about the menselijke maat, the human scale. So when you're dealing with a tower, you have to think about how do you deal with we call it in our jargon, the Eindhovense laag, that human scale, the menselijke maat. And we have to create more green and more openbare ruimte. And we're starting, and under me as a supervisor, we're starting with the Stadhuisplein. We'll start with the Stadhuisplein, and we'll move out to the rest of the city. There are wonderful pieces of architecture and urban planning in Eindhoven. As somebody who's not from Eindhoven, I've seen really beautiful things. But we have to find more of a bindmiddel to join them together and bring them together. And if you, Stadhuisplein, it is a very beautiful plein, I've been told. But so I'm not going to criticize it, Ronald, but it needs more green. It needs more definition. We need to define the plein more. So we're going to start with defining this square. These buildings that we're going to build here are the supporting act for the plein. The hoofdspeler in Eindhoven will be the Stadhuisplein, and the buildings are the supporting act. We start with the first building. So this is the Stadhuis. This is an existing building, the old Stadhuis, I believe. We're going to add an extra floor here and a tower here. Then we're going to across the Stadhuisplein. You now know, many of you know that this is now already demolished. We're going to build a building here and some buildings behind. Then we're going over here, another building, and we're going to define the Beheinerhof and define this plein. Then we'll build a building here, and finally we will build, the idea is the building there. It is about creating a plein, the Stadhuisplein. So the plein, we want to define it, and then we want to build the walls around it, the architecture that makes the plein, and we want to add, on the top here, we call it the Belvedere level. And that is extending the plein, making it more three-dimensional, so that when we have an event, public events, people can be up there and the plein gets even bigger. It gets more spacious. This is the square, this is the plein, where people in Eindhoven will celebrate, they will protest, they will party, and they will cry. When there's a big loss or something you want to sadness, this is also the plein that will be done. So this will be seen from, this is the Stadhuis. So we're defining the plein, and then next, and the buildings around it will be defining the plein. So when you come into the city and somebody says, where is Stadhuisplein? You see those group of buildings there? That's where the Stadhuisplein is. You go to the Stadhuisplein, and then in the plein, you have that more human scale.